A toddler lost in the woods, a stray dog by her side. Discover how loyalty turned a wanderer into a hero no one expected. When a child vanished into the forest, hope was fading, until a forgotten stray dog became the guardian who saved her life. One night, a little girl faced the dangers of the wild, and a stray dog chose to protect her, rewriting fate with loyalty. From abandoned stray to fearless hero, this is the true story of a dog who rescued a lost toddler and captured a town's heart. In a quiet town surrounded by dense woods and winding streams, there lived families who had long found comfort in the rhythms of simple life. The mornings were filled with the calls of songbirds, the evenings with the hum of cicadas, and the nights with the sound of wind threading through the trees. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved at each other across picket fences, children rode bikes on cracked sidewalks, and everyone knew everyone by name. Yet, within this peaceful setting, one story would rise above all others, a story of loyalty, courage, and an unlikely hero who wore no uniform, wore no badge, and asked for no recognition. This hero was a stray dog, and his story began not with a celebration or spotlight, but with a restless wanderer padding silently through the shadows of the woods, unnoticed by most, yet destined to be remembered forever. The dog, a scruffy mix with golden brown fur and soulful eyes, had no name that anyone knew. Some kids had called him Rusty when they saw him scavenge near the old train tracks, while others whispered about him being dangerous, warning their parents not to get too close. Yet, the truth was simpler. He was just a lonely soul surviving the only way he could. He spent nights curled under porches, days trotting along back roads, always alert, always moving. He was the ghost of the town, seen by all but claimed by none. But fate has a strange way of calling upon the overlooked. On a crisp autumn morning, the Parker family prepared for what seemed like an ordinary day. Their youngest child, Emily, a 2-year-old with bouncing curls and wide blue eyes, was the light of their home. She toddled after her older brother Jason, who was busy with a toy truck, while their mother, Sarah, prepared breakfast. Emily's father, Tom, kissed his family goodbye before heading to work, unaware that within hours their world would tilt into chaos. The woods near their backyard had always been both a source of beauty and caution. Children were told not to wander too far, for the paths twisted endlessly, and even adults sometimes got disoriented among the towering pines. Sarah often warned Jason to keep Emily close, but toddlers have a way of slipping away in the blink of an eye. That morning, while Sarah was distracted by a phone call and Jason played by the edge of the yard, Emily's curiosity drew her toward the woods. She chased a fluttering butterfly, her laughter soft but fading as she toddled further from safety. By the time Jason noticed, his little sister's figure had vanished into the green shadows. He called out, but Emily didn't answer. Panic set in. He ran to his mother, voice trembling. "Mom, Emily went into the woods." Sarah dropped everything and bolted outside, heart pounding as her eyes scanned the tree line. The woods swallowed sound, and there was no trace of her daughter's laughter now. The town rallied quickly once word spread that a toddler was missing. Neighbors formed search parties. The sheriff's department brought out volunteers, and voices echoed through the forest calling Emily's name. Hours stretched into the kind of minutes that felt eternal, each second dragging with fear. The air grew heavy, the light dimmed as afternoon shifted toward evening, and hope began to flicker like a candle in the wind. What no one knew was that Emily was not entirely alone. Somewhere deeper in the woods, a pair of watchful eyes had been following her small, unsteady steps. The stray dog, Rusty as some had called him, had been resting under a fallen log when the child's presence disturbed his solitude. He watched as she stumbled through the underbrush, her shoes snagging on roots, her tiny hands brushing against thorny bushes. She cried out when she fell, and something in the sound stirred the dog's instincts. Rusty was no stranger to hunger, cold, or the dangers of the wild. Coyotes lurked in the darker corners of the forest, snakes coiled in silence, and night brought a chill that cut to the bone. The child had no chance of surviving alone. And so, without hesitation, the stray dog followed. He kept close enough to guard, far enough not to frighten her. When she cried, he nudged her gently with his nose. When she stumbled, he circled around, blocking paths that led deeper into treacherous terrain. Hours passed, and the woods grew darker, yet he did not abandon her. For reasons no one could explain, this forgotten dog had chosen to protect a child who was not his. Meanwhile, Sarah's cries grew hoarse as she scoured the forest with lantern in hand. The sheriff coordinated with searchers, mapping out areas to cover, but the woods stretched vast, swallowing light and hope alike. Volunteers carried flashlights, shouting Emily's name, the beams cutting through fog that began to creep between the trees. Yet, despite all the searching, it was the dog who had found her first, and it was the dog who stayed. Emily grew tired, her eyelids heavy, her sobs turning into hiccups. The ground was damp and unwelcoming, but when she collapsed in exhaustion, Rusty lay beside her, curling his body around hers. His fur became her blanket, his warmth her shield against the encroaching night. Coyotes howled in the distance, and the dog's ears perked. He growled low, a warning in the darkness, daring anything to come near. The toddler clutched his fur unconsciously, and he did not move. When the search stretched into the second night, hope wavered dangerously. Families prayed, volunteers pressed on despite fatigue, and Sarah refused to leave the woods, her heart tethered to the belief that her daughter was still alive. It was just before dawn when a deputy spotted unusual paw prints near a clearing, prints too large to be a fox, too soft to be a coyote. Following them, the deputy stumbled upon a sight that would forever be etched in memory. A stray dog lying protectively around a sleeping toddler, both curled together as if they belonged to each other. The deputy called out in shock, startling Rusty, who lifted his head with a warning growl. His body stiffened, prepared to defend. But Emily stirred at the sound and lifted her small voice, saying softly, "Doggy." She patted his fur with innocent trust. The dog relaxed, as if understanding the danger had passed. The rescue team rushed forward, scooping Emily into safety, tears of relief streaming as radios crackled with the news. "We found her. She's alive." Back at the search base, Sarah collapsed to her knees as she saw her daughter in the arms of rescuers. She embraced Emily fiercely, crying into her hair, whispering promises of never letting her go again. The story of how she survived soon spread, with every detail painting a clearer picture. The stray dog had been her guardian angel in the woods. Local reporters picked up the story, broadcasting headlines that caught national attention. "Stray dog saves lost toddler." Rusty became a sensation overnight, though he knew nothing of fame or recognition. He only knew the bond he had formed with the little girl, a bond written not in words, but in actions. Sarah and Tom, once wary of strays, now saw him differently. They couldn't bring themselves to let the dog return to the streets. They brought him home, gave him food, a bed, and finally, a name. Rusty, the same name the kids had once whispered with uncertainty, now spoken with gratitude. Yet, the story did not end with his rescue. What followed was a journey of healing, trust, and the blending of two lives that had once been lost but were now found together. Rusty had not only saved Emily, he had saved a family from heartbreak and taught an entire town the meaning of loyalty. His story would live on, not just as a headline, but as a testament to the unspoken power of it. Rusty's first night in the Parker household was unlike any night he had ever known. For years, his bed had been cold earth, his shelter a patch of peas, and his food whatever scraps he managed to scavenge. But now, he found himself lying on a soft blanket by the fireplace, the glow of flames dancing across the room. Emily refused to sleep without him nearby, her tiny hand resting gently on his fur as she drifted into dreams. For the first time in his wandering life, Rusty wasn't alone. He had been given a place, a name, and a family who looked at him not as a stray but as a savior. The next morning, the world outside had already begun buzzing with the story. Local news vans lined the street. Neighbors stopped by the Parkers' home to offer their relief, bringing casseroles, flowers, and tears of joy. Everyone wanted to see the stray dog who had done what search teams, deputies, and trackers had struggled to accomplish. Rusty became a symbol of loyalty. His picture splashed across newspapers with headlines that read, "Hero dog protects toddler overnight in the woods." Though the attention was overwhelming, the Parkers shielded Emily and Rusty from the chaos as best as they could. Sarah often closed the curtains, holding Emily close, reminding herself that what mattered most wasn't the spotlight, but the miracle that her daughter was safe. Still, the town could not let go of Rusty's story. At the diner, conversations buzzed about him. At the school, children drew pictures of the brave dog. At church, prayers of gratitude were spoken, some even calling Rusty a gift from above. The sheriff gave interviews, describing the deputy's discovery of the dog curled around the toddler, and each telling only deepened the awe. But as Rusty lay quietly at the Parker home, munching on his first proper meal in days, he knew nothing of fate. All he understood was that Emily laughed when she played with him, Jason tossed him a ball with delight, and Sarah stroked his fur with tenderness he had never known. In the weeks that followed, Rusty settled into his new life. He learned the rhythm of family, the morning chaos of breakfast, the quiet of afternoons, the warm togetherness of meals. Emily toddled around with him at her side, often holding onto his tail or hugging his neck. Jason claimed Rusty as his best friend, telling kids at school that their dog was a hero, earning admiration he had never felt before. Tom, once skeptical about animals in the house, found himself whistling for Rusty after long days at work, scratching behind his ears, as though the dog had been part of their family all along. Rusty had filled a space no one realized was empty, bringing not only protection, but also healing. But heroes, even quiet ones, face tests. One bitterly cold night in January, the Parkers' home was struck by a small electrical fire. The flames began in the basement, hidden and slow, until smoke began seeping through the vents. The family slept, unaware of the danger creeping upward. Rusty's ears twitched, his nose catching the faint, acrid scent. He sprang to his feet, barking loudly, circling from room to room. His growls woke Sarah first, who sat up groggily before realizing the house was clouded with smoke. Panic surged through her chest. She screamed for Tom, who raced to gather the children. In the chaos, it was Rusty who barked furiously at the back door, guiding them toward escape. Jason stumbled with coughing. Emily clung to Sarah's arms, and Tom shoved the door open as cold air rushed in. The family spilled out into the night, shivering but alive. Moments later, the fire department arrived, containing the flames before they spread further.
The firefighters marveled when Sarah explained how Rusty had woken them, refusing to let them sleep through the danger. "He saved her once, and now he's saved us all," Tom whispered, pulling Rusty close, eyes wet with gratitude. News of the house fire and Rusty's second act of bravery reignited the community's admiration. Rusty was no longer just a stray dog who saved a toddler. He was a true guardian of the family. The story spread beyond their town this time, picked up by regional stations, even national outlets. Soon, Rusty's picture appeared on television screens across America, his amber eyes glowing with loyalty as anchors told the tale of a dog who had rescued his family twice. With recognition came opportunities. Offers poured in, from dog food companies wanting him as a mascot to television shows eager to feature him. The Parkers, however, hesitated. Rusty wasn't a performer, and their family wasn't looking for profit. What mattered to them was the life they now shared with him, the trust and love that had grown from tragedy. They politely declined most offers, choosing instead to keep Rusty's story as a reminder of miracles, not marketing. Still, they allowed one thing, for Rusty to visit local schools, where children gathered to hear Emily's mother tell the story of how a stray dog saved her daughter. Rusty sat patiently as dozens of small hands reached out to pet him, his calm eyes meeting theirs with gentleness. For children, he became more than a dog. He was a living lesson in kindness, bravery, and hope. Over time, Rusty's fame settled into something quieter, something richer. He became part of the fabric of the town. On walks, people stopped to greet him, some even leaving treats by the Parkers' fence. During festivals, he was invited to ride in the parade, a ribbon on his collar, as children cheered his name. Rusty, once invisible, was now beloved by all. Yet, what mattered most to him never changed. At night, when the world grew still, he curled at Emily's bedside, her small hand resting in his fur. He had found his purpose, and it was as simple as protecting the ones who had given him love. As years passed, Emily grew from the toddler who had wandered into the woods to a spirited little girl. She told anyone who would listen that her dog had saved her life, sometimes with the dramatic flair only children could muster. Jason, too, shared his bond with Rusty, often saying the dog taught him what real courage looked like. The Parkers found that their home felt fuller, warmer, safer with Rusty in it. He wasn't just a pet, he was family. And while the headlines eventually faded, in the Parker household, the story never lost its glow. One evening, Sarah stood by the back porch, watching Emily and Jason play in the yard while Rusty chased after them with the energy of a dog who had rediscovered joy. She thought of how differently things could have turned out that day in the woods, of the hole that might have existed in her heart had Rusty not chosen to follow her daughter. Gratitude swelled in her chest, unshakable and deep. She whispered into the night air, "Thank you," knowing Rusty might not understand the words but would feel them all the same. Rusty's story became something parents told their children, neighbors shared with newcomers, and teachers passed along in classrooms. It lived on not just because of the miracle of a stray saving a toddler, but because it reminded people of the power of compassion, of the unseen ways love can find its way into the world. The Parkers often said that they hadn't rescued Rusty, Rusty had rescued them. Twice. And in truth, they weren't wrong. As Emily continued to grow, she carried her bond with Rusty into every corner of her young life. When she was afraid, he was her courage. When she was sad, he was her comfort. When she laughed, he was her joy. In him, she found her first best friend, her protector, and her hero. And though Rusty never spoke a word, his actions told a story richer than any language could express. A story of how a forgotten stray became the heartbeat of a family and the legend of a town. The tale of Rusty's loyalty is more than a moment in history. It is a timeless reminder that heroes come in unexpected forms. They don't always wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes they walk on four paws, their only mission to love and protect. And for the Parkers, for their town, and for everyone who hears this story, Rusty will always be remembered as the stray dog who became a hero. So as you sit with this story tonight, think about the unseen lives around us, the strays, the forgotten, the overlooked. Sometimes, they carry the greatest strength of all. Sometimes, they hold the power to change lives forever. And if this story has touched your heart, share it with others. Because stories like Rusty's remind us of the beauty and loyalty, the courage and compassion, and the miracles that walk quietly beside us every day. Like, share, and subscribe to hear more true stories of loyalty, courage, and the bonds that transform lives.